Mount Everest is the ultimate dream for most mountaineers. Many go through years of training and prior climbing experiences just to prepare themselves for such a peak. The reason is simple. Mount Everest is the tallest peak in the world, with an elevation of 8,849 meters above sea level. The long climb spans over multiple days, exposing climbers to some of the most brutal conditions possible. Reaching the summit marks a significant achievement in many people's lives. However, climbing Mount Everest certainly has a price. In 2023, Mount Everest claimed the lives of 17 climbers, with 9 fatalities occurring in May alone. Today, we will focus on 2 of these climbers, both at different stages in life but on the mountain at the same time. Their stories serve as a tragic reminder of the mountain's unforgiving nature and the growing concerns surrounding the influx of inexperienced climbers. In the past, the expectation for attempting an Everest summit was that you were a strong, self-sufficient climber with experience to handle most situations. However, in recent years, we clearly see that this is no longer always the case. Third-party expedition companies now advertise their Everest trips requiring little to no experience, as they will guide you step by step to the summit, as long as they are well paid, of course. The dangers of this approach are quite obvious. As more and more inexperienced climbers attempt to summit Everest, controversy builds up in the mountaineering community. There is no better example than 59-year-old Indian teacher Suzanne Jesus. With record-breaking climbing permits granted for expeditions, Suzanne, a part of the Glacier Himalayan Trek, traveled to Nepal and from there to Everest Base Camp in early May. The camp was busy, to say the least, with over 47 different teams all trying to reach the top. Typically, summit bids have to be shared across multiple expeditions, as the weather will only permit a few good days at high altitudes, causing long lines to build up in various locations. The weather in May fluctuated greatly on Everest, but conditions slightly improved as the month went on. Temperatures hovered around 27 degrees Fahrenheit or -2 degrees Celsius, and there were stray storms that brought snowfall, adding to the risk of avalanches. Visibility was great when it was not snowing, and climbers had to take advantage of these moments. In preparation for her summit bid, Suzanne, like most climbers, began with acclimatization trips, which involved traveling to higher altitudes, resting, and allowing the body to adjust before returning to the starting location. This process is repeated multiple times and provides valuable information to expedition leaders. However, Suzanne's acclimatization trips showed very concerning signs. Accompanied by a Sherpa in the first week of May, she struggled to make it past Crompton Point, a location 250 meters above Everest Base Camp, taking over 5 hours on her first try. Despite repeated attempts, her condition worsened. The Sherpas were honest with her and heavily warned against continuing, but Suzanne would not listen. At the age of 59, she had a dream of becoming the first Asian woman to summit Everest with a pacemaker. She insisted on climbing, citing the paid fees as a reason. There is no record of Suzanne having any significant climbing experience, other than an Everest Base Camp hike in 2022. Despite warnings and deteriorating health, Suzanne began her Everest attempt on May 17 but could only make it 500 meters above base camp before being forced to stop. Her condition had worsened to the point where a helicopter was called in to evacuate her. She was flown to Lukla for medical assistance but, unfortunately, was pronounced dead on May 18. Her story is a tragic example of the dangers posed by inexperienced climbers attempting Everest. Meanwhile, Malaysian climber AG Isand Yakob arrived at Everest Base Camp in early May. Originally from Kampung Benonai Paper Sabah, Yakob was a Malaysian police officer, a family man, and an extreme sports enthusiast. Despite living an active lifestyle, his major mountaineering experience was limited, having previously attempted Everest unsuccessfully. Yakob joined the Nepali Pioneer Adventures expedition and performed well during acclimatization climbs. However, as the team prepared for their summit push, the weather changed rapidly. On May 18th, Yakob and his team reached Camp 4, at around 8,000 meters. The death zone, where the oxygen level is insufficient to sustain human life, posed severe challenges. On May 19th, during the final summit push, Yakob showed signs of altitude sickness. Despite efforts to descend quickly, Yakob became unresponsive and was pronounced dead before reaching Camp 4. His body was later retrieved and returned to Malaysia. Suzanne and Yakob were two different individuals but shared the dream of climbing the tallest mountain in the world. Their stories highlight growing concerns about the increasing number of permits granted and the inexperience of some climbers. There is no doubt that stricter regulations are needed, but at the end of the day, money talks the loudest.